2 months ago, at an intimate reception on the eve of the Genesis Open at Riviera, Rory McIlroy had just finished a Q&A with Tom Turner, the legendary Hollywood producer, and Eamon Lynch from the Golf Channel, when he was greeted by an old friend. 10 years had passed since he had first met Will Ferrell. That was a Qantas flight in November 2013 when they were both travelling to Australia. Rory for the Australian Open at Royal Sydney, where he would beat Adam Scott, and Ferrell for the premiere of Anchorman 2. I was just sitting there and I got this tap on the shoulder, Rory laughs. I looked round and it was Ron Burgundy. He gave us tickets and we went to the premiere. What relevance has this to the 90th edition of the Masters at Augusta? That's a fair question. Let's go live to Brian Fantana and Champ Kine to find out. Thursday morning, 10 to 6, and we're going to the Masters. First round. Sun is not up, and the start of a long day. So we'll be lucky to we'll be lucky to get out of the press room at what, 8 o'clock this evening?
8 or 9 before we can finish the video or something.
Okay,
like that.
so that'll be about what, 12 hours? No more. 14 hours.
Yeah.
14 hours. Are you paid by the hour? What's the rate? I can't remember. You need to talk to them about that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say, I know the responsibility. You're at the fucking Masters. What else do you want? I think that's fair, is it?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. We don't get any sympathy for that. Welcome back. We'll be hearing from the two boys again soon. Now, someone has been sabotaging my teleprompter. Cheap shot, Miss Corningstone. Because the legendary Hollywood producer was, in fact, Tom Werner and not Tom Turner, and 12 years, and not 10 had passed since Rory had met Will Ferrell. The perils of live TV. We've also had correspondence from a viewer in Dublin. John from Blanchardstown wants to know if that is indeed a Riviera Country Club shirt I'm wearing. It is, John, and well, what can I say? Been to some great places, and we're going to be joined after the break. Yeah, he's here. Yep, we're going to be joined after the break by Britt Tamland. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, Brian, let's start. Are you a Will Ferrell fan?
I am, yeah.
So what would be your favourite? You watched Anchorman. Let me suggest that to you.
Okay, yeah.
And what character from Anchorman would you most identify with?
You'd probably say Brick.
Brick Tamland.
Brick
Well,
Tamland.
that's very good. Excellent. Brian, now we met down at the start this morning at 7:25. The ceremonial start, which is the traditional way that the Masters starts every year. And I mean, let me ask you first, when was your first Masters?
2009 when Rory played for the first time. Yes.
Okay.
18 years.
So, and the starters then were?
I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure that Arnold Palmer was around and Jack Nicklaus was probably around.
And Player
was
must have been.
Probably would have been those three.
Okay,
big
so
three.
Arnie
would have been.
Arnie, Gary, and
yeah.
I
don't think the older guys would have been still doing it then.
That's a fair shot. So let me tell you how old I am, because my first Masters was 1997, and the ceremonial starters were. Do you want to give it a shot?
Gene Sarazen.
Yeah.
Sam Snead.
Yeah. 2 for 2.
And Byrne Nelson.
So now explain one thing to me. You weren't sure who the starters were for Rory's year, and yet you knew who my starters were. Look, you have an unbelievable, you've an impressive mind for a brick. You're well wired. Okay, let's talk about this morning, because I hadn't actually been back since '97, which is quite shameful, really.
I always go.
You always go, do you?
I always go.
Okay, good.
I always go.
Why?
Well, you sort of think, oh, well, I go down there now. It's freezing cold. It's dark. It's at dawn. I mean, it's literally before they send the guys out for the first round. I go, yeah, I'll go down. Who knows when I'll ever see Jack Nicklaus again, or Gary Player again, or Tom Watson again. I mean, Gary Player's 90.
Yeah, but he still looks. He looks like he could go for it.
Like the guy who's going to last the longest.
He does, because Jack is 86.
Yeah.
didn't look that well this morning. And he walked back in after hitting the shots. He walked back in and had to pause for a moment just opposite where I was standing, actually,
Yeah.
at the entrance to the clubhouse there, the rail.
That's right. Chat to one of the green jackets. I thought that was a deliberate. Let's have an impromptu chat here, but he might have been catching his breath.
But I think he was catching his breath. I mean, that was the reason he stopped, because you could see even going down, he was kind of breathless. So, yeah, it was nice to be there, because it really brings home what makes this tournament special. I mean, you could actually sense the reverence and the love, particularly for Nicklaus,
Absolutely.
in the crowd. And then there's that lovely, gentle ripple of applause that they get is really good. Anything else?
Hey, Nick Faldo was there, and you can't miss Nick Faldo, whatever he is, 6'4", and he's there in his green jacket. And underneath the green jacket, sort of a stripy T-shirt, vertical stripes.
I didn't.
I only found that out later.
I actually met him, but I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I only found out later what that was. Dave Cannon, the photographer, told me that he was wearing the 1996 shirt from when he beat poor old Greg Norman.
So
that fantastic final round.
30 years ago.
30 years ago.
I remember watching it, obviously. Yeah.
So he wanted to just get a picture of himself 30 years after killing off poor old Greg Norman.
Yeah, no, I think there's every chance he's going to be one of these starters, in the not too distant future. I don't know what you think.
Nick Faldo.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Who's ahead of him? I mean, who's ahead of him?
Well, yeah, this is true. Yeah, in the age stakes, well, you got your Larry Mises and people like that, and the Sandy Lyles and Woozies. They're all the same age, aren't they? I mean, Seve obviously passed away.
In terms of stature.
In terms of stature of the game with the 6 majors, yeah, I suppose he's ahead of those. He's ahead of all those guys. Is there anybody else with no? Yeah, he would be. He would, and he would love that. Yeah, he would love that.
Anyway, that was lovely, and
be a while before Rory's doing
it. And again, and the crowd. There was so I got to the centre, the media centre, about 6:10, and the photographers were actually heading down at that stage.
Yeah,
like to get a good.
Yeah,
it's great.
And the boys came in and did a 35-minute or 40-minute press conference afterwards. So it's there's just great reverence for, and the stories. People never get tired of hearing the stories and tell us about the '86 and tell us about this, and player will go on about fitness and the ball, but you love hearing it all again.
Okay, lovely, Brian. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back soon. Welcome back. Now, we've had some more correspondence, and from a Ger Kelleher in Ballinagree, he sent us a photo, actually, of his infant daughter. There she is. Isn't she a dote? Anyway, he said, Alice will be cheering for Shane Lowry today. Well, I hope she has something to cheer. She had something to cheer about. Brian, let's talk about Shane.
Yeah. My dad followed most of Shane's round, and it was a bit of a roller coaster. 70 in the end, 2 under par, and I think he would have taken your hand off for 70.
Well, perfect start. I mean, he
unbelievable
absolutely
start.
Nailed that.
Nailed his tee shot straight down the first.
Yeah.
Hit an 8-iron to about that. No stress. Knocked it in. Had an eagle putt on the second. Made 4. Had an 8-footer on the third, and we were thinking, geez, it could be 3 under here. Missed that one, okay. And then he hits it up to the back of the green on the par 3-4. Yes, another birdie chance, great. And I went up to the back of the green, and he hit the first putt, left it a bit short, a little bit, about 6 feet short, and then took 3 putts from there. And all of a sudden, he's walking off the green, crestfallen, really, because I noticed him on the second hole after the great start, and he was so focused.
Yeah,
he was just trying to. Just focusing,
And this is like 4 holes into his round, his first round, and he's 3-putting. And you don't want to be doing that round here.
No, you don't. It's kind of can sap your confidence. It just shaves away.
And it's the sort of thing that would have sapped his confidence not too long ago.
He's had a few rough knocks recently,
yes,
as well. Obviously there's a couple of tournaments that he could have won and had a bit of a faux pas at the end. And he said in the build-up to this, he said, look, this place, it's on a knife edge the whole time. 6 inches this way, eagle. 6 inches that way, you might be walking off with a double bogey. You got to roll with the punches here. You got to take your lumps and try not to let them affect you, which is easier said than done. But I think, it's his 11th go-round here now.
Yeah.
He's 35 rounds under his belt now after today.
Yes.
Plenty of experience. It's all happened to him, as Rory was saying later as well. You've experienced it all around here. So I was a little bit concerned for him, but
the turning point.
Yeah, he bogeyed the 6th as well, so he's 1 over all of a sudden. After thinking, geez, Shane could be out in 31 here. Next minute he's 1 over, and going, it's not looking great. And then he hits it over into the trees on the 7th, going, oh my God. So he chips it into the bunker, hits it in from about 8 feet. And he'd had the same putt in practice with John Carr, who was one of the members here.
Okay.
And he said, they won't be putting a pin there this week. It's on the terrible slope. And they did. So he knew the line, knocked it in, and then made birdie on 8. 50-yard pitch, into that. Birdie, 30-footer up the hill on the 9th. Brucey bonus, and suddenly he's 1 under par, turned down. And then he was off, So 10, lovely, 11, lovely, 12, lovely. And then 13, 68 yards, which is not his favourite distance, apparently, he was telling us. And he'd been doing a little bit of practice on that distance. Holds out, eagle. All of a sudden, he's right in the thick of things. He's just whatever, a shot off the lead, I think he was at that stage, or maybe 2 off the lead. So, it was he didn't finish probably as well as he might have liked. Both the 17th.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, well, his coach was saying, that pin on the right, you're sort of thinking, just go anywhere but right. And of course, it ended up in the second row of the grandstand, made 5, and got a bit of a break at the last, hit a tree, and it came out.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that,
hit a tree, and it came out, and he hit this forehand that pitched at the stick, and just ran over the back, and he had a little ticklish little wall down the hill. 2 putts. That's thank you very much. 70. I think Jason Day was playing with him, shot 69. He's well up there, and Dustin Johnson was all over the place, but didn't have too bad a score.
Okay, so he said something really interesting in the press conference after when he spoke to us.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether he volunteered that quote about Rory, which I thought was terrific.
Yeah.
Because Rory had gone to 5 under at that stage.
Yeah.
And he could see it on the board, and I think he looked up and said. He'll win 4 in a row. He looked at.
Somebody said something along the lines of, great round, and great to see Rory up there as well. And he's sort of looking and going, geez, he's 4 under now. He could probably make another 4 coming in. He was 4 under after 14, I think. Yeah. So he'll probably make another 4 coming in. I don't know if that's great. He's very good, He's hard to beat. But he sort of said it in sort of that little,
Yeah, the bit that made me smile. But the bit that made me swell, he probably win 4 in a row now. Haven't.
Knowing him, you'll go on a run. But I think he was happy. I mean, he was happy that it didn't get away from him. That he managed to keep the head. After the mistake, he said. He said you can't try to be perfect around here. I mean, he's learned that if you're trying to do everything perfect all the time, you're just gonna freeze. You're just not gonna be able to play, are you? So. I thought that was a pretty positive start for Shane. Very good start for Shane, because he said this could be one of the toughest Masters, because it's already like a Saturday out there. Yeah. In other dry years, it's just the greens are like lightning, and it wasn't even that windy today. Yeah. So okay, there's some good scores up there, but great start.
Great start, Brian. Thanks. We'll be talking to you soon.
I love Lamp.
Thank you, Brian. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. Well, as promised, we're going back to the 2 guys who I believe have set up in a rather special place. Thanks, Ron. Well, as you said, we're coming to you live from Amen Corner at the end of a tremendous 4th round. Now, let me throw something at you, Conor, not an Azealia. Not a lot of people know this, but only 6 Masters champions in history have held at least a share of the 4th round lead the following year. Jordan Spieth in 2016, who finished tied 2nd. Jose Maria Olazabal in 1995, who finished tied 14th. Jack Nicklaus in 1966, who went on to win. Gary Player in 1962 was beaten in a playoff. Arnold Palmer in 1961, who finished tied 2nd. And Jack Bork Jr. in 1957, who finished tied 7th. So, a great start for Rory, who joins that list with a 67 that leaves him tied for the lead with Sam Burns at 5 under par.
Yeah, it was a magnificent day. I think there was a lot of doubt about Rory just because we haven't seen him play in 3 weeks competitively. And just the whole returning champion bit, we didn't know how it would feel different for him. But after 9 holes, he was 2 under, not having played well. Yeah. And you knew he was going to have a good day.
Okay, it didn't look like that at the start. Now, there was a couple of interesting things. The first was I was standing just on the other side of the clubhouse where they walk out, or this side of the club where they walk out. And at first I thought, well, I must have missed him because he's obviously on the putting green. And then, because his name was on the board, the starting board with Cameron Young and the young amateur Mason Howell, I thought, Jesus, I must have missed him walking by, because it was like, was getting late, and sure enough, a la Bryson DeChambeau, he walks out of the clubhouse and crosses over to the putting green. So just 6 minutes before, it actually fell shorter than that. 6 minutes before he's due to tee off. So interesting that he arrived so late. The other thing, sorry, was actually before that. You saw him on the range then, yeah.
Yeah, I went to pick him up at the range. I always think that like of all the sports people, I think golfers in their warm up are the most revealing about what they're going to do. And of all the golfers, I think Rory sometimes is the most revealing because he's so disinclined to kind of hide it. And he was hitting balls in the range. Cameron Young was actually to his right. Xander Schauffele was to his left. And he was hitting these big high draws that were coming in off the wind. And like to our sort of very untrained eyes, they just looked really, really nice. But himself and Harry were coming back to look at their TrackMan. And you can tell they weren't, not with every shot that they were 100% happy with it. And I was like you, I was checking Rory's tee time because it was getting very close to it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to catch him on the way out. And in the end, I kind of left the range with Rory and Harry still hitting balls because it was going to take me a little bit longer to get to the range.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see because Rory was hitting these big high draws in that swing that he has, and Cameron Young was beside him, and he has this swing where he kind of pauses at the top and then explodes down onto the ball. It's quite violent, and he was hitting a very tight cut, and they were really kind of juxtaposed next to each other. But he looked really fired up, and
Right.
Rory looked a little bit
Iffy.
a bit iffy going out. Yeah.
Right. Then the other really interesting thing, and this is something that he said in his press conference after, was, you know, because as I said, I was waiting. I saw him coming out. I thought he looked focused. I thought he looked very relaxed. But in the press conference, Rory said he walked to the first tee, and his hand was actually shaking as he put his ball on the tee, as he teed up.
Yeah, and he said it in such a way that he was conveying the fact that he was reassured by that.
Yeah.
And he said there were certainly somebody came back to that question at the end, and he kind of noted that there were tournaments last year. Now he didn't elaborate on that, but I'm thinking straight away the PGA and the US Open, when you could see that his head and his heart wasn't quite in it.
Right.
And I think what he was trying to kind of get across was the fact that the first tee nerves at the Masters meant that he was kind of nearly in the zone, and I think he kind of took reassurance from it.
Yeah, and that was really the question, wasn't it? Because he's been, you know, such an ambassador, if you want, these last few days. The Champions Dinner, he turned up. He arrived earlier than he ever has for the women's event on the Saturday. He's with the kids on Sunday, making a presentation. So it's been very different, and you kind of wondered like what that would do to his focus. But as you said, you're reassured by that.
I was trying to get a question in at the end just about his preparation, because first of all was the competitive absence. Like golfers obviously have to be very, very sharp, and it's grand hitting balls in the range, but you have to be stress tested with those big weights and everything else. But the other thing is, like every year Rory came here and he did the opposite of the last year, playing the par 3, not playing the par 3, here on Sunday and not. But this week he had no decisions to make because he had so many obligations, and in a weird way I think that kind of helped him.
Yeah.
He just woke up every morning, did the thing he had to do, didn't overthink it, made sure. And you know, I saw him on Tuesday. I absolutely, I haven't watched any other golfers practice rounds, but I followed him for 10 holes on Tuesday, and he was so at his ease. And if anything, he didn't play quite as well today,
Right.
and he ended up with a 67.
Right. So another interesting thing. So he tees off, and I walked down the left side of the first fairway, and I did that deliberately because I was interested to see would Jerry, his dad, be there, because that's Jerry's route every year. Always walks down the left side of the fairway, and his select team would always use that route to get down the first. And I kind of wonder, because Jerry wasn't there last year, his mother wasn't there last year, would they be there this year? And of course they were. Well, we'd seen Jerry earlier in the week, but I hadn't seen Rosie. So Rosie is there, Jerry is there, Erica is there, and but the crowd was so thick.
Yeah, I only realised that because I got a good spot on the left-hand side, and Rory's ball kind of pitched right in front. And actually, I couldn't see who had teed off, but I knew it was Rory's ball because we were so close. The roars on it was actually facing up, so we were that close. But I only realised how thick the crowds were when I turned around after he'd hit, and realised I actually couldn't move between the first and we had to move at the same pace as everyone else. So we headed off then to the second fairway, and we were on the right-hand side, and the ball pitched right beside us there as well. So he was 2 holes in. He'd missed his landing spot by a fair distance,
Right.
and you were beginning to think it's a little bit off here.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, he birdies 2. 2 is the most birdieable hole on the course, probably for Rory.
Because there were a lot of eagles there today.
Yeah, and like he bogeyed 3, which is just not a hole he should really be bogeying. Now the ball was hanging over the lip, and he went and he looked at it several times.
Right.
But that's the sort of hole when he's not quite going, you kind of think, yeah, this is going to get on top of him. And there was a struggle. Like, he was struggling for pars. He wasn't missing birdie putts. He was struggling for pars because he didn't hit a fairway until the 9th. Well, sorry, on 7 he hit a fairway, but it was the 17th fairway.
Right. Well, so when you say struggling for pars, he was really having to work for it, because he parred 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
But from difficult positions.
Yeah, well, put it this way, he wasn't really in with chances of birdies, so he was either just off the green. Now, he wasn't under a huge amount of stress either. Yeah. But, getting birdie opportunities is the sign that they're hitting the ball well here. And then he hit a long drive up 8. He was in the rough. But straight away, you could tell by him that he fancied the shot. And I thought it was a 5-wood. He clarified in the press conference it was a 3-wood. He went down on the grip a bit, and he hit this low one. And it's such a cool looking shot from beside him, because of that big elevation. The ball never really gets up in the air; it just kind of skips on. And he 2-putted for birdie, and then he did hit a fairway on 9 and birdied again. And you're thinking he's only at 60% here, and he's 2 under par.
So that was the first fairway he'd hit, was 9.
Yeah.
You said that, yeah. Then par on 10 and 11. 12, interesting shot on 12. Go on.
That was interesting, and I heard somebody else speaking about it. Can't remember who. And it was about the wind today. It wasn't a huge wind, but somebody made the point that they had to delay their shot on 12 because the difference between the wind blowing and it not blowing was going to push it long or left. Yeah. And the miss today was long left, and Rory went long and left. But you couldn't really see where it ended up because it kicked. It was a big left and it was a big kick left. So you're thinking this is a difficult one now. And then he pulls out his putter and he just strokes it up to an easy tap in. Right. And again, it's just, you were kind of anticipating these little dramatic points in the round. There was no drama at all today. No drama.
Okay, isn't that interesting?
So interesting.
Because you look at, I mean, we've always said this every year, the performance of past champions, like people like Fred Couples, and early on today, Alathabal again, who come back every year, and it's almost like this is like instinctive. They can instinctively play well here.
Yeah.
Now he has that.
He hasn't broken 70 here on a Thursday since 2018.
Right.
Like, he shot 72 last year and won the Masters.
Right.
So you're looking at that. I thought it was interesting that he said afterwards he should have shot 2 under. Right. From watching it, I felt 3 under, but maybe he's kind of rounding down. But the key thing for me was that, like last year on the par 5s, Rory shot 13 under par. His final score was 11 under par. Right. So today on the 4 par 5s, he birdied all 4.
Okay. So great start, and again interesting, because when you think back to how long he struggled in the 4th round, that was always the obstacle. Like, he'd come out and really struggle. So great start.
Great start. And he was like, the birdies at 13 and 15, I'd say he kind of feels like he got away with 2 there. Right. Because he had to lay up. He was in the trees on both. He had to lay up. He didn't get particularly close with his wedge. Right. And he held like downhill slider putts that you're just not going to, like, your XG on them or whatever you want to call it.
What's that mean?
Expected as goals.
Expected goals?
Yeah, but if you...
Where did you get that from?
If you extrapolate that into golf, your make percentage chance...
Well, where are you getting all this stuff from? Can you not speak English? This is... Listen, this is getting complicated. We're going to take a break and we come back. Thank you, guys. I'm Ron Burgundy, and that is indeed the Butler Cabin. And... Oh, what's this? What a cute little toy! Baxter! Isn't that lovely? We'll see you tomorrow. You stay classy, Augusta.